بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, and I thank Allah for giving me this wonderful opportunity to attend this beautiful university among beautiful people to discuss a very pertinent and a beautiful subject. And I bid you peace and greetings with Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a wonderful start, commencement is to say, to hear a beautiful person like yourself, Sister Sana, may Allah bless you, who, when I heard who you were from a lot of the students, and Brother Hussein is also one of the students who used to attend this university, they speak nothing but highly of you. And it's a blessing because when you have a good person in the community, somebody who's a good role model, somebody who's wise, and somebody whose vision is wide and not tunnel vision, those individuals prevent damage, they prevent ignorance from spreading, and they help others to realize their existence better. So it's wonderful to hear that, and it's not. I use you as an example because I think life is nothing but a series of practical examples, as our Prophet has said, "Man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbah." When you know yourself, you will know your Lord. And I think when you know your surrounding and you know who the good people are, you will begin to understand the example of the true representatives of Allah, like the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and those of the members of Ahlul Bayt, from the perspectives of those who are supposed to and we should follow. As the sister beautifully mentioned, the love of Ahlul Bayt is fundamental, and it's in the Quran. It's a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the love of Ahlul Bayt. Even the Prophet has negated the statement followed by an exception telling us how important the Ahlul Bayt are, and therefore he leaves no room for argument with regards to love of Ahlul Bayt. The subject is Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, and he is indeed to me an enormous figure not only in Islam but for humanity. Because when I read writings by Orientalists, they have nothing to say about him but good things. Because he certainly was a very pivotal figure in Islam after the Holy Prophet. There is no question in the mind of any Muslim in the world, and I'd like to establish that very clearly, regardless of what school of thought one belongs to, the fact that the Holy Prophet cannot be supplanted in his position by anybody. As a representative of Allah on this earth, there are no human beings combined that can supplant the position of the Holy Prophet in his position where he is. In Surah Al-Ahzab, Surah number 33, Allah says, "An-Nabiyyu awla bil-mu'minina min anfusihim wa azwajuhum ummahatuhum." An-Nabiyyu awla. The messenger has greater rights on the believers than the believers have upon themselves. Awla bil-mu'minina min anfusihim. How important that verse is. Meaning that the Holy Prophet has more right on me and you than we have on ourselves. That means if I want to sit down and my Prophet says to me, stand up, I would be violating the laws of Allah if I sit down. Think about it. You can say, but Prophet, don't I have my own rights? Imagine the position of the Holy Prophet. And you will see that the entire Quran, cover to cover, has a theme. It's a theme that we must present even to the non-Muslims. And the theme, even non-Muslim scholars, like as I mentioned, Harold Bloom has written a book called Genius, and I've quoted him a few times in my presentations. You'll find Harold Bloom makes an interesting statement stating that the Quran is the only book in the world where the author is God from cover to cover. There is no other divine scripture where God is exclusively speaking. All the other divine scriptures of other religions, they're speaking through man, and mankind is saying, I think this is how it should be. But then they apply it as inspiration from God. But you'll find not in the Quran. You'll find even when the Prophet is asked a question, he doesn't answer in the Quran. Allah says, "Qul," say, and then the Prophet answers. So you will never find a statement in the Quran where the Prophet speaks on his own by himself, with his own ideas, though he is Rasulullah. And Allah says, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْحَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. The Prophet doesn't speak of himself except that which Allah tells him to do, reveals to him. Even then, you'll find the Quran maintains that constancy in theme. And Bloom also notices something. I don't, Bloom is not the only one. There are many, but I'm just quoting one. He says what's fascinating about the Quran is that the central theme of the Quran is the authority of God. Is the submission to God. He said any accusations people make that this messenger of the Muslims supposedly plagiarized or copied from pre-existing scriptures is a false accusation. Because if he were a plagiarist, as one would use that word, or if he were one who copied from previous scriptures and he concocted this religion, then he certainly should have made himself the central theme of the book. But rather he makes a notation that God in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, this Muhammad, if he makes one mistake, we will grab him and cut his jugular vein. Meaning that he says, look at this, how can a man say that upon himself if this is not the words of God? So what we find is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is keeping us focused. That our religion has an axis, and the axis must be central. The minute the axis moves out of its position, it becomes what we call referential and not integral. And therefore, you lose the spin, as one would say, and you go out of orbit. And that axis is, Man amana billahi. You see, you must believe in Allah. Now what is belief in Allah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَرْتَابُوا وَجَاهَدُوا بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الصَّادِقُونَ. Surely the believers are who? They believe in Allah and the Messenger, and they give themselves, their wealth, fi sabilillah. These are the truthful believers. So it is incumbent upon us, especially as Muslims, that we should focus our entire life to look at what did the Messenger of Allah want from me. He is the central figure. When we talk about a great personality like Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, his importance is not outside of that axis. He is also deriving his authority, his position, his stature through the Prophet and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise it's impossible. Meaning he does not supplant, he does not become the center pivot. No, the pivot is Allah. And on the earthly matter, when it comes to physical material, it's the Prophet. Authenticity and importance of any individual in Islam after the Prophet must come through and by the Prophet. Otherwise it's nullified. There are wonderful people in the world today, but we cannot put them in the same position if the Prophet did not put them in that position. So the character of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib is so important that by Allah's decree, it's wonderful when I look at the world today, that the Muslim Ummah is the fastest growing Ummah in the world. Has been and continues to be. In fact, it's interesting, I was recently interviewed on radio, and the radio interview was asking live radio, it says, and I said to him the same statement, did you know that, for your information, Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world? So he tried to be rhetorical with me. He says, really? Why is that? And I looked at him and said, because Islam is the truth. قُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقِّ وَزَحَقَ الْبَاطِلِ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. Say truth is ever prevalent. Is it not true that the truthful person always wins in any argument? He was stumped. The second time they interviewed me, they did a recording, not live. They delayed the recording. I said, no problem. But the point is that we should be honored that Allah has given us a religion that is so powerful in the world today. It's not a religion that's going and killing people. It's not a religion of violence. It's not a religion that goes and takes people by the sword. I was speaking at a university in front of a very good crowd, mashallah. Non-Muslims, very nice people, but you could sense the tension. And I posed a question to them. This is something all of us should use, brothers and sisters, in the defense of our religion. And then I'll speak about Imam Ali, inshallah. Because everything I'm speaking, I will explain to you where we got all these examples from, of course. I said, we Muslims are accused that this religion, Islam, was spread with a sword. I know when I was in junior high school in this country, I was told that this religion was spread with a sword. And that Islam equals terrorism, equals violence. I said, don't you think logically that if my religion is the one that tells me how to go and kill people and make them into Muslims, that at least this scripture called the Quran, which is holy to the Muslims, which is the scripture given unto man from God, the last revelation, that God should tell us how to use this sword for a moment? Or maybe at least mention it, and we can be metaphorical about it, mutashabihat, give me an allegorical verse, and I can sort of twist it on the sidelines and know how to use it. I said, do you know that this entire Quran, from cover to cover, does not have the word sayf in it? There is no word called sword in the entire Quran. Subhanallah. And they're stumped. Of course, if they pose a further question, which I don't like to do, because I don't believe in being antagonistic with other religions, but if anybody poses, I say, just for your information, the Quran has no word called sword in it, 0. But you will find the Bible, old and new, has more than 340 times the word sword and how to use it. So I said, it's ironic that you guys have all the words on how to use it, and we're the ones supposedly using it, and our religion doesn't even tell us how to use it. The point I'm saying is the Quran is a book that you and I should look up to, and the religion, the example of the Holy Prophet, is such an immaculate example that should be sufficient enough to bridge these different schools of thoughts. I dare a human being on earth, even identical twins, who agree on everything. Even identical twins, that means they're identical genetically. They're not the same in their opinions. They have difference of opinions. It's human nature. Allah has allowed it. When we have differences, even in the school of thought, Allah has allowed it, and He has allowed us to search the truth. Because Allah says, otherwise He could have made us one ummah. Okay? مَا خَلْقُكُمْ وَلَا بَعَثُكُمْ إِلَّا كَنَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ. Allah says, I didn't create you from just from one we made you. But there is a divergence. This divergence implies we have to understand our differences. We have to discuss them, not hide. People say to me, we need to tolerate each other. I say, I don't like that word. Don't tell me tolerate. Tolerate means I hate you, but I'll bite my tongue when I see you. No, I don't believe in that. He said, well, how are you going to solve this problem? I said, it's simple. Simple. I was just at Salisbury University among all the Christian groups, and I was talking to them. I said, is it not ironic that you and I claim to believe in God? The very same God that made the other side that I don't like. He shaped you too. I'm a Muslim, you're a non-Muslim. Guess what? He made you. He sustains you. He feeds you. He gives you cover. He listens to your prayers. And here I am on this side trying to shove religion down your throat. Is it possible? Or I cannot tolerate you. Or you cannot tolerate me. What belief in God can an individual have the audacity to speak about and submit to the very same one that you and I are working against his creation by saying, well, that one I don't like, I need to go and kill him? How? Doesn't make sense. It's a paradox. So the solution to you and I understanding our reality on earth is that the fundamental principle that we possess is submission to Allah. And why is submission to Allah so important? Precisely for this reason. Otherwise the atheist will ask you, what do I need God for? If since God exists according to you, He feeds me just like you. I wake up in the morning and I eat the same food you do, and I'm as healthy as you. There's no difference. The difference is you believe in God, I don't. What's the difference? The difference is precisely this, that there's a uniting force, a point, where there is one thing that the atheist is missing out on, which is the system of good and evil. See, Allah says, كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ. You are the best in the ummah. Who are you? تَعْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ. You enjoin the good, you forbid the evil, and you believe in Allah. Why? Because the moral system of the individual is the fundamental principle behind all religions. That's why the Prophet says, بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I have been sent to perfect your moral characters. But my moral characters don't make sense if Allah is not at the front of it. At the pinnacle of it, the submission. وَمَنْ يُسْلِمْ وَجْهَهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ. One who submits his face is the truthful one. Why? Because I fulfilled my objectives. It is not only science that comes under my way, but my morals come under the way. If you ever have a debate with an atheist, I'll just give you a very quick point to make, to show you the power of this great religion. Anytime an atheist starts speaking to you and talks scientific, ask them one question. Because they say science has all the answers. Ask them this question, please. Where in science is the notion of good and evil? And by the way, atheists do believe in the existence of good and evil. Show me where in empirical science, observe anything, biology, cosmology, geology, any RG you want. There is no such thing as good and evil. It doesn't exist. In science, there's no such thing as good and evil. It does not exist. Subhanallah. Yet all of us, including the atheists, say that's not good to do. I said, you are supposed to be a scientist, empiricist. How dare you say the good and an evil statement? It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to us. And anybody will tell you, the best human being is not how many atoms you possess. The best human being is one who's good. Right? It's not in quantity, it's in the quality. Qualification doesn't come with quantities, it's measurements. This is the difference. You and I have a religion, brothers and sisters, that's the best. In our world today, there's a dividing line, and the enemies want to divide us. Clearly. And until and unless we understand where our differences lie, we will not follow through. What's beautiful about Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib is the fact that he is, even among the four schools of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and the Ja'fari, which is the Shi'i, Ithna Ashari, we find the bridge is Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. To the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Amir al-Mu'mineen is Khalifa al-Rashidun, right? He is the fourth Khalifa, Rashidun. Karram Allah wajha, they say. We say as Shia, we say alayhi salatu wassalam. Blessings of God be upon him. But still, Amir al-Mu'mineen is held with high reverence on both sides. That should be the bridging. See, between you and I as Muslims, when you speak to Christians, our focus should be Jesus. Isa alayhi salam. That's our bridge. To us, he's so important. We love him. He's infallible. We love him. He's as we say, Ruhullah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him that title. Ismuh al-Masih, Isa ibn Maryam, al-Masih. So we should be bridging. When a Christian comes and talks to us, they have a love relationship with Jesus. So don't speak nothing but Jesus alayhi salam, and show them how important Jesus is, and show them that he is a servant of God. This is important for us. So now, when we correct those visions, when we discuss, you've got to find what we call commonalities. To me, as a Muslim, when Allah says, Inna ad-deena 'inda Allah al-Islam, the religion to God is Islam, what it means is that Islam to us is that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to follow. And we have to discuss these issues and say, which pathway should we follow? Not Shia or Sunni or this Fulan bin Fulan or Fulan. No. We need to look at Allah and His Messenger and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Messenger, Oh Rasulullah, that you've been chosen, you have more authority on me than I have on myself. Please tell me what to do. If it means go that direction, I must go that direction. If you forbid me from that direction, it is forbidden for me. I don't care what anybody after that says. It's not important. So it is important for us to understand. Why do we love Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu? Look at his history. From a child, the time Amir al-Mu'mineen was born, the first person he laid eyes on, they say, was the Holy Prophet. He picked him and carried him. And the first person he opened the eyes to was the Holy Prophet. Alayhi salatu wassalam. You find that in the end, when the Prophet passed away, he passed away in the hands of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib is the one who buried him. So if you look at the span of the entire life of the Prophet with Imam Ali that overlapped, Imam says, I was like that she camel, the baby camel that followed the mother wherever this messenger went. I was his servant. He taught me all this art. The art of wisdom, the art of fighting, the art of defense, the art of patience, the art of submission. He says, my whole life, read the whole Nahj al-Balagha, which are sermons, a collection of Amir al-Mu'mineen, you'll find that his entire collection of sermons, nowhere does he ever say he's better than the Prophet. In fact, he insists that the reason Allah has sent me is to direct you to the Prophet. Otherwise, there's no reason for the existence of such personality. It needs to take us to the messenger, the center. This is the reason. That's why, by the way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mention the names of any companions in the Quran except one. And even that one was strategic because of marriage to what we call adopted sons. Otherwise, Allah would not even have mentioned his name. Because Zayd ibn Harith was not a critical figure, as you want to call it, among all the great personnel. Though Zayd was very close to the Prophet, but still not a critical player. But even his name is mentioned. Why not all those critical players who were with the Prophet? No. Allah doesn't mention it. Why? Because Allah wants us to know who they are through the Prophet. And Allah wants us to know that when you do know who they are, don't lose focus of the Prophet. Because the minute names are mentioned after the Prophet, they will eclipse the Prophet, and Allah says, no. The messenger will always remain central to your faith. So you find Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib from the perspectives of how I see it. And I will say certain statements. This is our position, it's not a problem. If you don't accept it, it's perfectly fine. It's an academic discussion. What you find is when our messenger was commanded at the age of 40, when he was commanded to go and now tell the world that he is a messenger. From the Ja'fari school of thought, the Shia school of thought, the Prophet was born a prophet. He was not for 40 years a man. He was a messenger, but in silence. He made no mistakes even in those 40 years. He was perfect, infallible, not a single mistake. And the evidence stands clear that when the messenger declared his prophethood to the public, you will find that he stood on the mountain of Abu Qubais, next to the Kaaba, and he called the people. And who were the people? Even Abu Lahab was there, Abu Jahl was there. They were all, the enemies were there. He says, come. He says, if I, Muhammad, tell you that there is a caravan behind this mountain, will you believe me? They said, yes, you are Al-Amin. You are an honest, trustworthy man. What is he proving? He's proving he has not told them he's a prophet yet. But the mushrikeen and the kafirin are admitting that you already have the qualities of a prophet, because he's checking them now. He said, then I tell you, there is no God but Allah. That I am the messenger of the Holy, I'm the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What you find is that now he puts them in that position. Can you challenge me? They say, oh, we don't have a doubt. You never lied, you never cheated, you never mistook. Impossible. As a result, what is interesting in history, and this is clear in all schools of thought, that before he did this public act, Allah says, وَانْظُرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ. Warn your near ones. It's very important to understand what that means. Why the warning of the Prophet as a prophet begins with the near ones and then goes to public? Never the reverse. And in the near ones, there was a different question that the Prophet asked, which he didn't ask in public. It's very important to understand. The point I'm saying is that when the Prophet goes to the house of Abu Talib, his uncle, and when he assembles the Banu Hashim, and he says to them, Allah has made me a messenger, a prophet. Who among you is going to be my helper, my brother, my successor? You find Ali ibn Abi Talib was a young boy. He stood up and he says, Ana. 9 years. And the Prophet said, sit down. 3 times, and then the Prophet appoints him and says, he is my helper, my brother. And it's true. Historically, there is no ambiguity that Ali ibn Abi Talib was the brother, the protector of the Prophet till the Prophet's death. What is interesting is that, by the way, in that event in the house of Abu Talib, you find that they even began to mock Abu Talib. To say, hey, this man has called himself a prophet, and now he's even given his son authority over you, O Abu Talib. The implication here implies that there is a need by which the Prophet is showing us who this personality is and the value of this individual. You find that during the time of the Prophet in Mecca, when the enemies were attacking him, it was Ali ibn Abi Talib who was next to him, protecting the Prophet constantly. History has recorded that there were 3 people saying their prayers in the beginning stages of Islam. It was Khadija alayhi salam, the Holy Prophet, and the 3 people. First 3 people were seen historically. The important point here to understand is that from that perspective you find after the pressure increased and when Abu Talib died, and Khadija died in that same year, you'll find that the Prophet's attack was coming strong and the tribes decided to attack and kill the messenger. And as you know, they decided to stab him in sync, meaning the whole leaders of the tribes, because they figured if they killed him together, it would be not possible for the Prophet and his family, the Banu Hashim, to take revenge on them. And the Holy Prophet says to Ali ibn Abi Talib, says, I have been commanded to leave Makkah. And look who sleeps in his bed. There was somebody who was needed to be in his bed. That's a very dangerous position, to be sleeping in a mantle, covered, and you've got these enemies with daggers sitting by the bedside till Fajr time, waiting to stab. And Imam Ali ﷺ historically says that when the Prophet told him to do that, he prayed 2 rak'ah salah, thanking Allah for being given the opportunity to lay his life for the love of the Prophet. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That's how important it is. And you find that Imam Ali slept in his bed. And in fact, he was so firm and resolute. Allah said, رِجَالٌ لَا تُلْهِيهِمْ تِجَارَةٌ وَلَا بَيْعٌ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Men who don't sell, who don't bargain with God. No, they don't bargain. They give their souls. You find that while he's sleeping, when the enemies pull the mantle before they stab, and Imam Ali sits, and they're looking at him, and they're surprised that the Prophet has left. So they say, where's the Prophet? And he said, did you give him to me so that I should return him to you? That's a wise, very wise statement. Did you give him to me so that I should... you think you've got daggers coming at you, they're all pointing at you. You'd have the time to think wisely at that stage, to say such a statement. But that's the power of a man who's given his soul for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the protection of the messenger. And the story is continual. And I know all of us as Muslims, we know many stories of how Imam Ali alayhi salam was on the front lines, always the flag bearer in every army. Always. He's the one who killed Amr ibn Abd, which was a very deciding battle, where they were in the tents, and Amr ibn Abd had jumped over the trench on the outskirts of Medina, and was poking inside the tents and says, come out, who will challenge me? And the Prophet asked the same thing, who will stand in front of Amr? Amr had the best armor one could possess, because he was the Goliath of the time. And you find that Imam Ali stands up and says, I. And the Prophet says, sit down. He gives the others an opportunity. And then Imam Ali goes. He goes and the Prophet says, observe the epitome of kufr and the epitome of tawheed, fighting. And then you find Amr ibn Abd is dislodged from this earth, and Imam walks away from him, and his sister comes and collects his shield. And Amr was known as the superstar. She says, I am very sad that my brother has been killed, but I am very honored at who killed him. Because Imam Ali walks away and doesn't even take his armor, leaves it. Leaves it because he has the right to take it, but he even leaves that. And that was one of the most precious armors of the time. He leaves it and walks away. To show the importance of an individual who has given his soul and life, fi sabilillah, that on the front lines, when it comes to wise guidance, and after the Prophet's departure, after all of that, you find his support in terms of making sure that the ummah wasn't lost, is so pivotal that I will conclude on that. Inshallah, we'll have a Q&A session. After the Holy Prophet's departure, as we know, there was a split in terms of the caliphate. And the Jews of the time heard of this situation. And they came to Imam Ali alayhi salam and says, Prophet just died and you guys are already divided. Who should lead? Look at the answer from Imam Ali alayhi salam. Brilliant answer. This is an answer all Muslims in the world should follow, as our sister Sana beautifully pointed out. But let's take it from the very manner he is fighting about, because he is the dividing point, in my opinion. He says to the Jew, He says, you have come to say this, but your forefathers, when Moses freed them from Egypt, even before the salt water had dried from their feet, they had already made an idol to worship, and not Allah. We Muslims are united on Tawheed. We Muslims are united on the Quran. We're united on the Prophet. We're united on the Qibla. We're united in Salah. We're united. We have not deviated. So this accusation is false. Get away from me. Look, we need to understand it from this perspective. That Imam Ali doesn't take advantage. He says, yes, just come. Come and join me because my right has been taken. No. Because his obligation is to serve the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah decrees something and chooses an individual as his representative, no human being can supplant them. When prophets came, people killed them. They didn't lose their positions. They're still representatives of Allah. It makes no difference what happens after. But we have to understand that our relationship as a bridging thing is on the basis of understanding these personalities. But brothers and sisters, before I end, I also want us to focus as Muslims and as humans on our commonalities. We have a tendency to forego the commonalities, our humanity, our belief, our faith in God, our submission, our love for God, our belief in Day of Judgment, our love to do good things, our abhorrence to do evil things. Let's look at those commonalities. When I look at a Christian, I say you and I are common in more than 85% of the time. We're common, if not more. We're very common. Our roots are the same. We're sharing the same principles. It's just you've gone a little bit different from where I stand. It's okay. We'll discuss it. We'll take you from the Bible and we'll show you. And if you don't agree, no problem. Allah says, قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ تَعَالَوْا إِلَىٰ كَلِمَةٍ سَوَاءٍ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمْ أَلَّا نَعْبُدَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Call them. Let's worship none other than Allah. And if they refuse, tell them we are Muslims. Allah doesn't say grab them and kill them. The accusations, that Christians and Jews should be killed and murdered. No. Allah said, tell them you're Muslims, walk away. But treat them nicely. So between us also as schools of thought, we've got to understand that all these ideas and accusations that have come on both sides are the accusations of what we call the vocal minorities. Governments and societies are driven by vocal minorities. We're a classic example in the West today. This country is being taken to smithereens by a vocal minority. The status of the American citizen in the world today is much lower than it used to be 20 years ago. Even 10 years ago, people would love to come to America. Today, American passports are not safe. Because it's a vocal minority that's dragging everybody into the hole. It's always a silent majority that suffers. When you find differences, when there is fitna, when there is a dispute, observe, you will see there's a vocal minority playing on both sides. Let us not fall to the games of the vocal minority. Let us hold hands as what we call the majority and become not silent, but become vocal. Let's change. And let's understand that we have to rise to the occasion. In the world today, this game of divide and conquer is a tactical game that's coming forward. Tactical. I was just interviewed on radio, and this guy interviewed me for 1 hour, and for 1 hour he's trying to drill me about Sunni Shia sectarian violence. I looked at him and said, how long do you know about this issue? Suddenly it's become so popular to you, huh? It's become so popular. He says, yeah, well, the sectarian violence in Iraq, is a big problem. I said, what are you alluding to? What's your point? He said, well, the Shia Sunni. I said, what's Shia Sunni to you? Catholics and Protestants have been killing each other. Buddhists have been fighting with each other. Hindus, sects have been killing each other. Why don't you want to make a big deal out of them? Why did you choose Islam? Difference of different schools exists in all religions. Why have you chosen this one? He says, well, because it's so prevalent. I said, let's analyze. I said, Saddam didn't like the Shias. It's not a secret. He used to kill the Shias. He used to kill them in mass. Don't you think the Sunnis would have had a field day holding guns and going and just killing the Shias? Yet they didn't do that. They weren't killing the Shias. Did you see it in Saddam's rule, 35-year rule? Did you see Sunnis carrying guns and killing Shias? No. Side by side. They were intermarried. So many families that I personally know, Sunni and Shias married together. During Saddam's rule. I said, suddenly the United States enters and Sunnis and Shias are killing each other. Don't you think you should understand who the culprit is? I said, since when has a superpower ever ruled us? without divide and conquer. Since when? Never happened. It's the only way to rule. Divide and rule. It's for you and I to allow these kinds of people to come and instigate between us to say, yes, you're a Shia, that Sunni is like that. Yeah, Sunni does this, or Shia does that. No. No. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold on to the rope of Allah together and don't deviate. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ. The believers are brothers. Hold on and iron out your differences. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not accept us on Judgment Day. And I conclude on that. I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak on a very excellent subject, as I say, on a subject that's very, very important on all sides, and on a personality that is very, very important to us all. That even Umar ibn Khattab, who was the second caliph, he said, had it not been for Ali, I would have been destroyed. It is Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib who guided him. Even at the time when Umar was going to fight the Persians, the army was leaving. I think he was fighting the Romans, the Byzantines. And when they were going to fight, Imam Ali stops Umar from going. Umar was already dressed to go. He says, no, don't go. He said, why? Why should I not go? He says, because you're the caliph of the time. If you go forward and your army gets killed, they will know there's no more backup because you're already there. Stay behind. It's better for you. Look at that guidance. So it is the role of those representatives of Allah to ensure that mankind and Islam in its infancy does not lose its position. And today, that growth of Islam, subhanAllah, as much as they hit us from 9/11, as much as negative information they give about Islam, it continues to grow. Post 9/11, people becoming Muslims is quadrupled. More people know the Quran now than ever before. After 9/11, the Quran was on the bestseller list. More Christians have Quran in their homes. What do you think is going to happen? Even Cat Stevens, Yusuf Islam, you know how he became Muslim? His brother went to Jerusalem, picked up a Quran as a souvenir, and gave it to his brother. Put it in his library. Think about that. And Yusuf Islam, right, Cat Stevens, was sinking in the channel, and he prayed to God. He said, if you're out there, I'll find you. If you're out there, I'm going to find you. But save me from drowning. And he came back. He says, I went home and I searched. And I opened this Quran and I read Surah Al-Fatiha. I knew I had reached my goal. And I became a Muslim. See the power? Sitting in the library. You would think, library of a superstar. What's he going to do? You don't know where the hidayah comes. إِنَّ هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ يَهْدِي لِلَّتِي هِيَ أَقْوَى. This Quran guides in the best of ways. Brothers and sisters, our obligation as Muslims is to understand, to love, and to respect each other. And as I say, the way we remove this tolerance factor and bring love into it is bring Allah forward. Allah is our vision. When we look at human beings, black, white, tall or short, see them through Allah. See them through the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how a messenger did it. This is how the Ahlul Bayt did it. This is how the representatives of Allah do it. That's the only way. وآخر الدعوة الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
تكبير الله أكبر تكبير الله أكبر تكبير الله أكبر.
Thank you. Any questions, comments to make? I hope I didn't take too long. Did I take? No.
I'm just going to say that we're very grateful for everything that you have said tonight.
May Allah bless you.
And alhamdulillah, I hope it reached the hearts of everyone in this room. You've said it very eloquently and you portrayed the unifying factor.